There was a time when standing on land meant death, and the only safe place left on Earth was underwater. Not in myth, not in metaphor, but in history. The air tastes of ash. The sky hangs heavy, bruised, and metallic. You can't tell if the sun has risen or if the world itself is burning. The ground beneath your feet shivers, breathing sulfur like a dying animal. Each step exhales poison. You've wandered into the Permian extinction, a tantrum so violent that 9 out of every 10 species simply didn't make it. Volcanoes in what's now Siberia have been erupting for nearly 1 million years, turning the atmosphere into a slow-motion furnace. The seas rise, the oxygen falls, and the safest place to stand is not here. Through the haze, you spot movement, tiny shapes fleeing the inferno. Lizards, insects, the last of the amphibians, all running toward the steaming shallows. On land, they choke. In water, they just might breathe. It's strange, isn't it? For the first time in Earth's history, water forgives what land condemns. You kneel beside a boiling shoreline. The sea hisses as rivers of lava pour in, but even this scalding refuge is gentler than the world behind you. Steam rises like ghosts, whispering a truth older than words. Sometimes survival means surrender. A mountain cracks open, molten light floods the horizon. You wade backward, step by step, into the tide. The warmth licks your knees. It's alive. The ocean seems to pull you in, not to drown, but to hide you. When the fires finally die, the scars remain. Continents crumble, oceans swell, and life that refused to kneel perishes. But those who followed the water, the swimmers, the burrowers, the drifters, endure. Because on this wounded planet, the sea keeps score, and it remembers who trusted it. You float in the heat-hazed darkness, hearing the land groaning somewhere behind you. For the first time, you understand the paradox. Water, the destroyer, has become the healer. And as you drift, the stars fade into ash, and you whisper the lesson carved into the bones of every survivor. When the land betrays you, let the water forgive you. You open your eyes again. The fire has burned itself out, and silence has replaced the screams of the earth. You're standing at the edge of a new world, one still steaming, still raw, but calmer. The coast stretches before you like a wound just beginning to scar. The forests are gone. In their place, shallow lagoons, mudflats, and tide pools glowing faintly under a sulfur sky. You kneel beside one. Tiny fish flicker between ribbons of green algae. Shells pulse faintly, like living embers cooled in salt. You dip your hand in. The water's warm, alive, forgiving. It shouldn't be safe, yet it feels safer than the land ever did. The survivors of the apocalypse crowd the shallows, amphibians, crustaceans, reptilian pioneers, creatures that refuse to trust land again. They've learned a quiet truth. The ground lies. The tide protects. You can almost hear their instinct whispering, "Stay near the sea. The land still remembers what it did." This is the beginning of the Triassic recovery, when life stitched itself back together along the shore. The continents have merged into one vast desert called Pangaea, but instead of stability, it brings suffocation, burning winds, choking heat, endless drought. So, the clever ones move closer to water, not to explore, but to survive. Every puddle becomes a refuge, every coast a crowded city of evolution. The ocean becomes the planet's lungs. You watch as fish gulp air, amphibians test the boundaries of both worlds, and mollusks grow shells thick enough to outlast acid rain. The sea, once a killer, now wears a patient smirk. It has outlasted the land's fury. Water forgives, land kills. You wade ankle-deep into a tidal flat. Beneath your feet, the mud is alive with movement, worms, larvae, unseen networks of bacteria rebuilding with the fire erased. The rhythm of the waves feels deliberate, like a heartbeat steadying after trauma. Millions of years slip by in the space between two tides. The ash skies fade, the air clears, and far beyond the horizon, something entirely new stirs. A different kind of creature, one that walks upright and dreams. You open your eyes again, and the coastline has changed. The air is crisp, cool, and familiar. You're watching Homo erectus, one of your own distant ancestors, crouched at the mouth of a river. He dips a spear into the shallows, chasing shadows of fish. But there's more in his eyes than hunger. There's recognition. Somewhere deep in his bones, he remembers. Water means life. Water means escape. Predators stalk the drylands, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, the nightmares of prehistory. But the hunter by the river knows, just a few meters from the shore lies safety. So they build rafts, fragile bundles of reeds bound with vines. Not to conquer, not yet, to flee. You join them, crouched low as the raft sways beneath your weight. The current pulls you away from shore, and for the first time, you feel what life itself has always felt, the relief of distance. Behind you, danger. Beneath you, mercy. The tide rocks you into stillness. The water hums with quiet life. You realize something profound. Maybe every creature that ever fled to the sea was learning the same lesson humans are relearning now. The ocean is where fear becomes patience. Night falls and the raft drifts. Someone hums a low tune. It's not yet a song, not yet a myth, but someday it will be. Because civilization won't begin on mountains or in deserts. It will begin where the waves kissed ashore. You close your eyes to the rhythm of the tide, and in the quiet, you hear it again. That ancient, patient voice. Stay near the water. The land still remembers. The raft rocks beneath you like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, familiar. Dawn breaks over a silver horizon, and for a moment, sea and sky blur into one. You blink, unsure where the water ends and the heavens begin. Then you notice shapes in the mist. Ruins, stone circles, half-buried columns, ghostly silhouettes of something once solid. You're drifting through a graveyard, but not of ships, of worlds. The year, if such a thing matters, is roughly 12,000 BCE. The ice has begun to melt, not gently, but violently. Glaciers groan and crack apart, sending tsunamis roaring across continents. Sea levels rise 100 meters, swallowing entire regions in a geological blink. The world is drowning. Villages vanish. Hunting grounds dissolve into foam. Whole cultures disappear beneath the tide, leaving nothing but the echoes of hearthstones and the ghost light of submerged fires. You peer down into the water. Beneath the rippling surface, you see it. Roads, homes, pottery, even carvings of animals that will never return. Sunlight refracts through the waves, painting these ruins in shifting golds and greens. It's hauntingly beautiful. Like staring at a memory the planet itself forgot to let go of. Some say this flood is where our myths began. The Sumerian deluge, Noah's Ark, the tale of Atlantis. Different tongues, same terror. Were they all remembering the same ocean? You wonder. And the answer, whispered through the current, feels like yes. A tremor rolls beneath your raft. You look up. The ice cliffs in the distance are collapsing into the sea, each one birthing a wall of water that races across the horizon. The air hums with ancient thunder. You grip the raft, breath quickening, realizing what your ancestors must have felt. The land betrays you again. The sea takes you in. And in that betrayal, life learns something new: to move. Humans scatter along the coasts, following fish, following rivers, following hope. They learn the rhythms of the tides and the temper of storms. They become wanderers, no longer of land, but of water. Across Southeast Asia, families begin to live entirely on boats. They drift between islands, diving for food, sleeping under constellations reflected in the waves. These are the ancestors of the Bajau, the sea nomads, people who can hold their breath for minutes longer than most hearts could bear. Their lungs adapt, their blood thickens with oxygen. Evolution once again bends toward the sea. But they aren't alone. Across the planet, the same story unfolds. In what will one day be Europe, a green plain called Doggerland stretches between Britain and the continent. Rivers braid through forests filled with mammoths and deer. And then, one day, it's gone, swallowed by the North Sea. Divers still find its ghosts, flint tools, antler spears, footprints preserved in clay. And sometimes, when the current is still, they say you can hear wind through phantom reeds, a sound that doesn't belong underwater. You drift through these echoes, realizing how fragile the illusion of stability has always been. The land changes, the sea takes, and yet, somehow, life flourishes. Because the flood doesn't just erase, it teaches. Forced to move, humanity invents everything that makes it human. Boats, trade, navigation, adaptation. You see it now, the first seeds of civilization, carried not in soil, but in salt water. A woman on a raft drops a shell necklace into the sea as an offering. A man sings a low prayer to the horizon. They don't call it worship yet, but it is. The ocean, unpredictable and merciful, has become something divine. You stare at your reflection in the water. The waves distort your face, reshaping it with every ripple. And in that shifting image, you see the truth that will echo through millennia. Every flood leaves behind new life. Every drowning births a new beginning. The raft drifts on. The stars fade into morning. And somewhere beneath the waves, a buried city dreams. Because what the land destroys, the water remembers. And it's remembering you. The air burns your lungs before you even breathe it in. You step forward and the ground hisses beneath your feet. The world feels alive, but not in the way life should feel. It's pulsing, twitching, steaming. Volcanoes spit rivers of fire across blackened plains. The horizon bleeds red. Mountains melt into liquid rock. Rivers choke on ash. This is not land anymore, it's a predator. You can almost hear it feeding. Every inch of soil exhales poison. The forests are gone, replaced by stalks of smoke and twisted stone. Even the insects that once ruled the skies stumble across the dirt, wings crisped, eyes clouded. Every instinct you have screams, "Get to the water." And you do. You follow a stream that glows faintly in the distance, its surface simmering like a living vein. It smells of sulfur and metal, but it moves, it flows, it endures. You kneel beside it, trembling, the heat curling the hair on your arms. The water's edge is a cruel mercy. It sizzles, but it's not lethal. For now, that's enough. You look around. Even the trees have fled. Their seeds ride the wind, searching for a cooler refuge near the sea. Amphibians crawl through ash, dragging themselves toward the same uncertain promise. Reptiles, their scales blistered, dig shallow trenches beside the tide. Everything alive seems to be converging on one truth. The only safe direction is towards surrender. Because on land, every breath is a gamble. But in water, there's a chance, a small one, but still a chance. You wade forward, watching creatures testing the same instinct you feel. Lungfish gulp the air, then vanish into the mud. Crustaceans crawl over steaming rocks, their shells gleaming like armor. Tiny fish dart through shallow pools that bubble and hiss, trying to find the one place where oxygen still lingers. The irony doesn't escape you. Life, once the proud conqueror of continents, now hides in the cracks between tides. Historians and geologists will later debate whether the ocean was truly safer or merely slower to kill. But standing here, knee-deep in shimmering heat, you don't care. The sea doesn't chase you, it doesn't burn or suffocate, it just waits. Behind you, the land convulses. A distant explosion echoes through the valley, and the sky blooms with orange light. You turn just long enough to see a mountain collapsing in slow motion, its peak sliding like wax into the sea. The earth moans as molten rivers pour toward you, turning sand into glass. You take one more step forward, into the waves. The water clings to your skin, warmer than blood, but alive with motion. Steam billows around you as the lava hits the surf, hissing in fury. The world seems to scream, and yet, beneath the chaos, you hear something else. A rhythm, soft, repetitive. The sound of waves, still breathing. You let them pull you in until the heat dulls and the sound steadies. In this narrow space between fire and tide, life still dares to exist. Small, trembling, but present. You close your eyes and listen. The planet is unmaking itself above the surface, but beneath the waves, it's building something new. Even the microbes know it. They gather around hydrothermal vents, feeding on minerals and sulfur, glowing faintly like lanterns in the dark. You dip your hand into one of those warm, swirling pools. It's toxic, it's unstable, but it's life. And that's when you understand the rule this era has written into the DNA of every survivor. When the land turns hunter, the ocean becomes the hiding place. The sea hums, ancient and patient. You whisper back into its steam. Fire burns land, but water forgives. And in that moment, you realize something extraordinary. For the first time in Earth's long, violent history, the water isn't where life ends. It's where life begins again. The coastline stretches before you like the scar of a wound that never healed, gray, trembling, and half alive. You trudge across the mud, your footprints filling instantly with boiling water. The air tastes like rust and rain. The world has not yet forgiven itself. Behind you, forests crackle in dying bursts of flame. Ahead, the tide shimmers with heat, steam rising from the shallows like breath from a fevered body. Every creature you see is moving in the same direction, toward the edge of the continent. It's not migration, it's escape. Amphibians drag their slick bodies toward the surf, lungs wheezing. Reptiles stumble behind them, shells blackened by ash. Even insects, frantic and confused, skim the tide line like desperate pilgrims. You can feel it in them, all of them, the pull of an ancient memory. Safety isn't found on land anymore. You crouch near a tide pool and watch a lungfish burrow itself into the soft mud, cocooning in a layer of mucus and hope. Its pulse slows. Its body stills. It's waiting for the world to calm down. Above the water, the sky rumbles in protest, but beneath, there's quiet. The survivors are learning. The sea teaches patience. The land teaches pain. The ash storms pass like ghosts, leaving behind relics. Shells fused to stone, bones half melted, charred trees standing like monuments. Yet, along the coast, something astonishing happens. Life clusters. In these shallow pools, oxygen lingers. Food collects. And for those who can adapt, evolution presses fast forward. You watch amphibians develop thicker skin, their bodies glistening with armor that can resist acid rain. Mollusks strengthen their shells, whispering resilience through calcium. Even fish are changing, their gills adjusting, pulling every last trace of oxygen from poisoned water. This isn't progress, it's desperation turned into design. Every mutation, every new shape, every bold experiment is written by the same hand. Survive by surrendering. You wade deeper, letting the tide rise to your knees. The water burns slightly, but you stay. The waves swirl with fragments of ash and minerals, carrying whispers of the dead into the deep. For the first time, you understand how the ocean remembers, by absorbing everything. Behind you, the land is a battlefield of absence. Ahead, the sea hums with possibility. Historians will one day call this the coastal refuge effect, the idea that life only survived here, in these narrow margins, because the ocean provided what the land destroyed: stability. But right now, standing in this hot, briny water, you don't need theory. You just need air. You inhale, slow and careful. Even here, the air tastes faintly of salt and smoke, but it's enough to keep going. In the distance, a shape moves, something massive, lumbering toward the waves. It collapses before reaching them, its body half turned to stone. You realize too late what it was, a creature that trusted the ground too long. You whisper to it, because that's what you do when the world is ending. You should have followed the water. The tide creeps forward, washing over its bones, pulling them apart grain by grain, until only sand remains. The ocean doesn't rage or mourn. It just takes, quietly, patiently, as it always has. You turn away. The air trembles. The sea glows faintly beneath the overcast sky. And you realize something that the survivors seem to know instinctively. This exodus isn't about strength, it's about surrender. Every ripple around your legs feels like a heartbeat. Every wave a whisper of mercy. Life has stopped fighting the world and started listening to it. And so, the lesson is passed down, not through words, but through blood and bone. When the land burns, move toward the tide. When the air turns to poison, let the water teach you how to breathe. Because for now, in this fragile balance between ruin and refuge, the ocean isn't the enemy. It's the last place on Earth still willing to forgive. The world smells of fungus and fire. You take one step forward and sink ankle deep into a spongy carpet of decay. The ground exhales a sour breath, warm and wet. Around you, the landscape ripples like living flesh. A world no longer ruled by trees or beasts, but by fungi. They rise in towers and sheets, pale as bone and broad as sails. Some glow faintly green in the dark, feeding on what's left of the forests. Others spill black spores into the air, clouds so thick they turn the sky into dusk. You cover your mouth, but it's no use. The spores find you. They find everything. This is the reign of decomposition. The land is feasting on itself. You walk carefully, watching each step disappear beneath a writhing mat of hyphae. These fungal webs are massive, stretching for miles beneath the soil, breaking down wood, bone, and flesh into nutrients. It's grotesque, but also strangely elegant. The world isn't dead, it's recycling. And yet, for anything with lungs, it's hell. Every breath is a gamble, every inhalation a negotiation with invisible poison. You turn toward the coast again. The sea, though thick with minerals and acid, feels merciful by comparison. Its salt air is harsh, but honest. You reach the waterline and watch amphibians hopping between pools, their slick bodies glittering under the bioluminescent sheen of microbial mats. The contrast is almost cosmic. On land, death grows tall. In water, life glows faintly, shyly, but steady. The sea has become a sanctuary of consistency. While the land burns and rots, the ocean simply breathes. You crouch near a shallow lagoon. It's alive with motion. Tiny crustaceans dart between mats of cyanobacteria. Shrimp-like creatures pulse in the dim light of sulfuric vents. Fish, small and defiant, hunt along the bottom. You realize you're watching something sacred, the continuation of life. Not thriving, not flourishing, just continuing. And maybe that's the bravest thing life can do. Historians and paleobiologists will someday argue whether fungi were villains or saviors during this age. But the fossils will tell a different story. The land may have belonged to decay, yet the oceans quietly prepared for rebirth. Even now, you can see it happening. Microbes cluster in strange glowing colonies, photosynthetic life returns, and oxygen begins slowly to creep back into the air. Every tide brings more balance, every wave softens the grip of ruin. The land above is a tomb. The water below is a womb. You take a slow breath, feeling the heavy air mix with sea salt. You realize that the fungi, for all their horror, have done something remarkable. They've cleared the board. Everything that will come next, plants, animals, empires, will rise from this rot. And you understand, for the first time, that creation always smells a little like decay. The sky dims. The glow from the sea thickens, like starlight sinking into liquid. You wade into it, waist deep now. The water hums softly around you, warm, steady, forgiving. On land, the kingdom of rot rules with spores and silence. But here, in the rippling light, life hums a lullaby of endurance. You let it carry you. You close your eyes. And for a fleeting moment, as the sea rocks you gently, you feel the planet itself whisper through the waves. This is what survival sounds like. You wake to a sound that isn't wind or water. It's the hiss of boiling breath. The tide ahead of you glows faintly in shades of blue and sickly gold. The air smells of rotten eggs and salt. You realize you've reached one of the planet's strangest sanctuaries, the Sulfur Seas. Steam coils up from cracks in the seabed. Beneath the waves, the world churns with chemical fire. Black vents spit clouds of minerals into the water, and yet, against every rule of logic, life gathers here. You step closer. A shimmer of motion below the surface. Tiny shrimp clustered near the vents, their translucent bodies glinting like molten glass. Long red tube worms wave gently in the current, their frilled crowns filtering poison into nourishment. Around them, bacterial mats ripple like silk curtains, painting the seafloor in surreal patterns of green and white. It shouldn't work. It shouldn't even exist. And yet, it does. The water hums with quiet life, each creature performing a delicate equation: turn death into sustenance, turn chaos into order. You dip your fingers into the tide, and it's warm, warmer than blood. You pull them out quickly, heart racing, and laugh under your breath. Even the ocean burns, you whisper. But here's the difference. Unlike the land, the ocean uses its fury. It transforms it. It doesn't destroy, it invents. Above the surface, the land still riots with storms of ash. Fungal clouds roll across scorched plains. Lightning flashes over skeletal ridges. Below the surface, the light is softer, alive. You float in that strange twilight, watching the world rewrite itself molecule by molecule. This is the crucible of rebirth. Some scientists will someday call this chemosynthetic evolution, life that feeds not on sunlight, but on the raw chemistry of Earth's rage. But standing here, half drowned in the warmth of these vents, it feels more like faith. Faith that existence can rebuild itself from poison. You drift between rising columns of steam, and something deep inside you changes. You realize the water isn't just surviving the apocalypse, it's learning from it. Each wave, each current carries whispers of adaptation, like instructions passed between generations. Endure, evolve, repeat. It's not peace down here. Predators glide through the haze, hunting by heat. Crustaceans scuttle into cracks, and worms retreat into their mineral tubes. But even in this chaos, there's a rhythm. No madness, only motion. And for the first time, you sense the planet calming. Not forgiving, not yet, but breathing again. You tilt your head back. The surface above glows faintly with the reflection of firelight and starlight mingling. The ocean's warmth rocks you like a cradle. Somewhere in that murky silence, a truth settles into your bones. The land burns because it resists. The water endures because it bends. And as long as something in this world is willing to bend, life will never truly end. You let your body float between warmth and cold, between death and creation, between everything you've lost and everything still waiting to be born. The ocean hums beneath you, a pulse, a promise, a memory forming in real time. And for one long, trembling breath, you finally believe it. For the first time in history, water is safer than land. You awaken to stillness. The sulfur clouds have thinned. The air above the water no longer stings your lungs. The ocean has cooled, and sunlight, pale and new, spreads like spilled gold across the waves. You paddle gently toward the horizon, and there it is, land. Not the scorched wasteland you left behind, but something younger, greener, fragile but growing. You wade ashore. The ground no longer hisses. Ferns unfurl like cautious fingers from the mud, and insects hum above shallow pools. A dragonfly lands nearby. Its wings shimmer, transparent and enormous. It shouldn't exist yet, you think, but it does. You're standing on the edge of the Triassic dawn, the world's tentative apology after the Permian fury. The sea, once a sanctuary, has given birth to this place. The air smells of moss, the wind carries warmth instead of ash, and the silence feels earned. But there's something strange about the survivors who crawl from the shallows now. They don't slither in fear, they march. From the coast, a small lizard-like creature emerges. Its skin gleams wet and black, its eyes bright with something that almost looks like defiance. It pauses, then takes a step onto the land that once betrayed its ancestors. 1 heartbeat, 2, then it breathes. It lives. You kneel and watch as more follow. Reptiles, early dinosaurs, amphibians, and insects, each hesitating at the threshold between surf and sand, then crossing it anyway. The tide laps behind them like a mother's hand, as if reluctant to let go. The water had protected them, healed them, and rebuilt them, but it never meant to keep them, because even mercy has its limits. You glance back at the sea. It gleams under the newborn sun, calm and knowing. It doesn't chase its children, it simply recedes, like a parent watching them walk away. And for the first time in millions of years, the land feels safe enough to hold life again. But not everything has forgotten. Not yet. You follow a small stream inland, tracing the route of those returning pioneers. The soil is black and rich with volcanic ash. Ashes of a world that killed itself and now feeds the next one. Plants bloom from decay. Rivers glitter through valleys that once burned. It's hard not to feel reverence. The world is quiet, humbled, beautiful in its scars. And yet, as you kneel by the stream, dipping your hand into the water, you realize something unsettling. The river runs thick with minerals. It tastes faintly of salt, like the ocean still whispers through it. The land is safe again, yes, but it is forever changed. You look up, and for a fleeting moment you see it, the faint shimmer of heat still rising from the horizon. Smoke drifting from the distant fissures. The memory of fire clings to the mountains, and the rivers that snake between them still carry the ocean's breath. It's as if the sea refuses to let go entirely. The survivors sense it too. They stay close to the coastlines, nesting near lagoons and deltas, drinking from brackish waters. Evolution remembers. Every fish that grows lungs, every reptile that learns to swim again, each one is shaped by the memory of this exodus. You close your eyes and feel it deep in your bones. The story will repeat. The balance between land and water will always sway, and every time it tips too far, life will remember where safety lies. For now, the earth rests. The waves retreat with a sigh, and you stand on the shore, the first piece of land in eons that doesn't want to kill you, knowing this fragile piece won't last forever. Because someday the land will forget, and when it does, the water will remember.
Millions of years drift by like waves, smoothing over the scars of catastrophe. The forests return, thick, damp, and patient. Ferns stretch toward the sunlight again. Rivers carve slow paths through valleys once filled with ash. Life blooms so vividly it almost feels like arrogance. The planet, it seems, has forgotten what it survived. You stand beneath colossal trees, their roots drinking from brackish swamps that still taste faintly of salt. Creatures crawl through the canopy, new giants with scales that shimmer like armor and voices that rumble like thunder. The age of reptiles has begun. The land is no longer the predator it once was. It's generous now. It feeds and shelters and warms. But beneath its surface, you can still hear a faint hiss, a buried warning, soft as steam escaping from a forgotten vent. You close your eyes and listen. It's the sea, still breathing through the soil. Every swamp, every lagoon, every inland sea is a whisper from that ancient refuge. Even here, surrounded by greenery and heat, the water lingers, patient, waiting, knowing that history will circle back. You follow a river downstream, through forests heavy with humidity. The world hums with insect life, a chorus of wings and croaks and clicks. The air is thick but sweet, alive. You should feel safe here. But something about the heat feels familiar. A tremor ripples through the ground beneath your feet. Then another. The earth is stirring again. At first, it's subtle, just the smell of sulfur drifting from the horizon, the distant murmur of steam through fissures. But then the tremors grow teeth. The ground flexes, trees sway, birds scatter. The land hasn't forgotten after all. It's remembering how to burn. You sprint toward the coast, heart pounding, the forest erupting in motion around you. Lizards scurry for burrows, amphibians fling themselves toward the marshes. The same ancient instinct that saved their ancestors now takes over. Get to the water. By the time you break through the last line of trees, the sea is already awake. Waves hammer the shoreline, lightning forks across a bruised sky. The ocean that once saved everything now mirrors the chaos of the land. But beneath the rage, you can still sense mercy. You wade in. The water is warm, turbulent, and familiar. It smells like survival. Behind you, the land buckles. A mountain explodes in the distance, vomiting light and ash. But even now, the waves cradle you. They rise and fall like slow, deliberate breaths. The same rhythm that has carried life through every extinction. You float on your back and stare at the dark clouds gathering overhead. And for a moment, you understand the pattern that binds every era together. The land builds, the land burns, the water forgives. Every civilization of root or scale or bone will rise here, forget, and fall again. But the ocean never forgets. Lightning strikes the water nearby. The world goes white, then black, then white again. When your eyes adjust, you see it. The horizon glowing red. The first sparks of another cycle. The sea hisses around you like it's whispering through clenched teeth. It's not angry, it's just tired of being ignored. You drift farther out, letting the waves pull you beyond the reach of falling ash. Somewhere beneath the surface, new life is already gathering. Organisms that will feed on the ruin, turn heat into energy, poison into promise. The same story, rewritten endlessly in salt and light. The land will heal again, someday. It always does. But for now, as the sky burns and the ground splits open once more, you whisper the only truth that has ever lasted. Water remembers. Land repeats. The rain begins to fall, warm, heavy, endless. And as the storm swallows the horizon, you can't tell anymore where the sea ends and the sky begins. Because in this world, safety has no shape, only rhythm. The storm has passed. What's left behind isn't ruin this time, it's memory. You walk along a beach made of time itself. Crushed shells, coral fragments, bones turned to stone. Each wave that laps the shore exhales the ghosts of everything that's ever lived. The sand crunches beneath your feet like powdered history.
The world is quiet now, calm in that way only a survivor can be. The oceans have cooled, the sky is clear again, and the continents have begun to drift apart like slow, sulking continents of regret. You kneel beside a patch of sediment and brush your fingers across a faint outline, a ribcage maybe, or the impression of fins that once cut through ancient waters. The fossil is perfect, delicate, heartbreakingly precise. It's a photograph made of rock, a reminder that the ocean never forgets its children. You stare closer. The bone pattern is strange, half fish, half limb. You realize what you're seeing, the blueprint of transformation. The story of the first amphibian, preserved mid-transition, like a snapshot of a thought caught between two worlds. This is what survival looks like. Not progress, not perfection, just motion, endless, quiet, faithful motion toward what works. You look up. The wind hums through the cliffs behind you, carrying the distant crash of waves. The sea hasn't vanished. It's still there, still whispering its lessons to the world. Every fossilized footprint you find tells the same story. We left the water, but the water never left us. Our blood still carries its salt. Our cells still hum with its rhythm. The pulse of the tide still beats inside our veins. You walk further along the shore, and the fossils change. Fish, then amphibians, then reptiles, then creatures with feathers and teeth. A mosaic of evolution unfolding like a hymn written in stone. You can almost hear it, the ocean singing through the bones. It's not a song of triumph, it's a lullaby, a memory that repeats softly, endlessly. Don't forget who kept you alive. You sit among the rocks, tracing the curve of a shell embedded in the cliff face. It's been here for 200 million years, maybe more. Still flawless, still patient, still here. You think of all the worlds that came and gone, all the forests turned to coal, all the creatures that breathed fire or air or water, and how they all left the same message in the dirt. Nothing lasts, but memory does. You stand. The tide reaches your feet, as if testing whether you remember too. The water is cold now, calm, no longer the molten soup of eons past. You step into it anyway. As it swirls around your ankles, the waves seem to murmur, "Look deeper." So you do. Beneath the surface, the seabed glows faintly, tiny organisms flickering like underwater stars. Each pulse of light marks another story being written in real time, one that will someday be buried, crushed, and rediscovered. You realize something dizzying. The ocean isn't just a witness to history, it's the author. The land writes chapters that burn away. The sea writes books that last forever. The sun dips lower, staining the waves in gold. The world feels both ancient and newborn. Somewhere deep below, tectonic plates groan, the earth rearranging itself yet again. But you know how this goes. The land will rise, it will fall. The water will remain. You look out at the horizon, and the faint silhouette of another shoreline far away shimmers like a mirage. It feels familiar, inevitable. Because every time the world forgets who saved it, the ocean will remind it, gently or violently, depending on the lesson. You kneel once more and whisper to the waves, "Thank you for remembering when we don't." The water curls around your fingers, cool and weightless. And for a brief, eternal moment, you can feel it breathing back. The sun climbs higher, brighter, fiercer, until it seems to lean closer to the world itself. The air thickens with heat. The glaciers, those pale ghosts of forgotten winters, begin to sigh and melt.
You can almost hear the planet's pulse speeding up again. The sea, which once whispered in rhythm, now swells and heaves like it remembers something, an old, terrible promise. And then, slowly, the water begins to rise. You stand on the edge of a continent, watching the shoreline fade grain by grain. The sand retreats under your feet. In the distance, villages crumble, forests drown, and rivers reverse their flow, spilling back into the mother they once escaped. It's not sudden, it's slow, almost polite, but it's relentless. You've returned to the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, a moment when warmth, not fire, became the destroyer. From the Arctic to the Andes, ice walls collapse. From the Himalayas to the Rockies, glacial lakes burst like shattered glass. And all across the world, human beings, small, barefoot, bewildered, begin to move. You see them now, huddled on a high ridge, watching the sea consume everything they've known. Their homes, their harvest, their ancestors' graves, all pulled under by the same blue mercy that once saved their distant kin. The old instincts return, the same ones that drove lungfish into the mud and reptiles into the tide. Flee to higher ground, stay near the water, but never trust it completely. It's a strange contradiction. The water that saved life in one era now tests it in another. You wade into the tide, the cold biting your skin. The current is strong but steady, carrying branches, bones, and the remnants of civilizations that never had names. You glimpse shapes beneath the surface, stone walls, carved pillars, packways, cities swallowed whole. One of them is Doggerland, the drowned land between Britain and Europe. Once, it was a paradise of rivers and grasslands full of deer and mammoth. Now, it sleeps beneath the North Sea, buried under centuries of silt and silence. And farther south, along what will become the coastlines of India and the Arabian Peninsula, you see the outlines of lost settlements, submerged stone temples, rings of walls, shards of pottery still etched with sun symbols, the fingerprints of forgotten hands. These are not myths, these are memories made of mud and tide. You drift above them, the waves carrying you gently over rooftops and ruins. The ocean hums below, not cruel, not kind, just inevitable. You can almost feel it whisper, "I warned you." Because this isn't vengeance, it's balance. Every ice age builds a debt the sea eventually collects. Every civilization that forgets where it came from eventually returns to where it began. You tread water as the horizon swallows the last tree. The world's edges are soft again, no boundaries, no borders, only flow. And you realize this isn't an ending, it's a reset. The sea doesn't destroy, it redistributes. It takes the stories written on land and rewrites them in salt. You close your eyes, floating on the surface. The current carries you across the ruins of the world, whispering secrets into your ear. That the flood myths are not fiction, that the ark was never a ship, that salvation has always meant adaptation. When you open your eyes again, the stars are reflected perfectly on the water's surface, so perfectly that you can't tell where the heavens end and the sea begins. And for the first time, you understand why so many ancient people call the ocean a god. It isn't because it grants mercy, it's because it doesn't need to. You drift until dawn, your fingers tracing the smooth, polished stones of the sunken world. You wonder how many times life will have to relearn the same lesson, how many times it will choose to build on land, knowing the sea will always take it back. The waves roll against your shoulders, gentle and final. And somewhere in that rhythm, the ocean whispers the oldest truth there is. Everything that stands will someday sink. The world has changed again. The fury has passed, and what remains is rhythm, tide, moon, wind. You open your eyes to find yourself standing where the water kisses the land, a fragile line drawn in silver under the sunrise. Here, along this edge, life begins again. The air smells of salt and promise. The sea no longer roars, it murmurs. The waves, though restless, move with intention, as if shaping something new. And there, at your feet, are the architects of the next age. Shells, kelp, birds, and bare human footprints pressed into wet sand. The land is populated once more, but now the people have learned. They no longer turn their backs to the ocean. They build with it, near it, for it. You walk among them, small clusters of figures along the shorelines, tending fires, weaving nets, shaping tools from driftwood and bone. Their faces are weathered by salt and wind. Their eyes reflect the horizon like its home. They are the first true coastal dwellers, humanity remade by tide. At night, their huts glow softly against the waves, and you hear laughter, the kind that carries easily across the water. They fish by moonlight, they sing to the rhythm of the surf, and when storms approach, they watch the sky and wait patiently like the sea itself. You realize something. The farther civilization moves from water, the more arrogant it becomes. The closer it stays, the wiser it seems. The people here know that the line between land and sea is never permanent. They read the language of waves like scripture. They mark the tides on stones. They know that the moon is not decoration, it's a clock. And from these simple rhythms, an entire culture forms. Shell beads become jewelry, then currency. Tide pools become schools, then temples. The fisher stories become myths. The first ocean gods, born not from thunder, but from memory. You watch a child toss a carved shell into the surf. It spins, catches the light, and disappears beneath a small wave. The child claps, delighted, and runs back to the fire. The gesture is simple, innocent, but you understand what it means. It's a prayer, a conversation with something older than time. These people know that the ocean is not to be conquered, it's to be courted. Their lives are fragile but balanced, existing in a narrow harmony that no empire will ever replicate. They are part of the pulse, not above it. But history, like the tide, moves both ways. And already, change is gathering again, quietly, invisibly. The rivers are thickening with silt. The rains grow heavy and unpredictable. Deltas form and collapse within a generation. And in the heart of this delicate dance between land and sea, the first cities are born. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley. Civilizations built not away from water, but because of it. You see their silhouettes forming out of the mist, stone walls rising beside floodplains, temples mirrored in still canals, barges drifting through fields that glitter like mirrors. Every city is a conversation between human ambition and the ancient intelligence of the tide. But even as they rise, you feel it. The same quiet arrogance returning. The belief that land can be mastered, that rivers can be chained, that water can be owned. You walk along the bank of the Nile, its surface gleaming like liquid copper in the sun. Priests in white linen whisper to the river as if it's a deity, and in a way, it is. They pray not for forgiveness, but for cooperation, because they know what happens when the water forgets them. Every flood brings both gift and threat. Every drought, a warning. Every shimmer of the horizon, a reminder that the line between safety and ruin is thinner than a ripple. The world's great civilizations bloom from this fragile balance, and you, standing among them, understand that what began as a refuge has now become a teacher. The sea no longer hides life, it tests it. The tide rolls in again, and for a brief, timeless moment, you can almost hear the voices of every era. Creatures, civilizations, continents, all murmuring the same vow beneath their breath. Stay close to the water, but never forget what it can do. The waves rise, then fall, pulling that vow back into the deep. And you, caught in its rhythm, realize something sacred. The ocean never punishes, it reminds. You awaken in a different age. The air hums with dust, the sky painted the color of old parchment. The smell of salt still lingers faintly, but the people no longer live by the tide. They've moved inland. You stand on a hilltop overlooking a dry plain stitched with fields and walls and smoke. The cities are vast now, terraced, fortified, proud. Rivers run through them not as gods, but as tools. The people speak of dominion, not dependence. They build towers that scrape the horizon, dam rivers that once carved their own paths, and draw maps that slice the world into ownership. The sea still murmurs at their borders, patient, amused. It's seen this before. You walk through one of these inland empires. The people are clever, brilliant even. They invent wheels, compasses, aqueducts. They turn deserts into gardens. But in their pursuit of mastery, something ancient has gone missing. The rituals have grown hollow. The songs to the river gods have turned to taxes and ledgers. The offerings that once flowed into the sea have been replaced by waste. You follow a canal out of the city, its water thick and slow. The banks are cracked, the reeds dead, the fish gone. The river smells tired. You kneel beside it, watching the current struggle. It's not angry, it's withdrawing. This is the moment the land begins to forget its debt. The first time in history that water becomes utility instead of memory. Empires rise on irrigation, but they don't see the irony. Every channel they dig, every dam they raise, is a whisper of control over something that was never meant to obey. And deep beneath the soil, the water waits. Drought comes, crops fail, famine sweeps through lands that once drowned in plenty. People cry out to the heavens, not realizing the answer lies beneath their feet, pulling quietly away. You walk among them as they wander, fleeing deserts that once were rivers, carrying their gods on their backs like broken promises. They're heading back toward the coastlines, though they don't know why. Instinct drives them, memory buried in bone. When they finally see the sea again, they fall to their knees, not in reverence, but recognition. The waves hiss along the shore, indifferent yet welcoming, like a parent who never truly stopped loving a wayward child. You step into the shallows with them. The water is cool, forgiving. The sun sinks red into the horizon. The wind carries whispers of the ancient lullaby. Come back when you've learned your lesson. And the lesson, as always, is balance. For a moment, the sea is merciful. The people rebuild along the coasts. They relearn the patterns of tide and moon, the sacred rhythm of flood and harvest. But history is impatient.
Within a few generations, the arrogance returns. They dig deeper wells, build higher walls, stretch farther inland. You can almost feel the ocean sigh. Because every time the land forgets its debt, the water comes to collect. It doesn't need to rush. It never does. It waits, centuries if it must, until the land grows brittle again. And when the time comes, it rises. Storm by storm, wave by wave, memory by memory. You stand on the shore, feeling the tide creep higher around your ankles. The air thickens with humidity. The horizon darkens with distant storms. It's beginning again, the slow, patient reclamation. The sea never forgot. The land never learned. You close your eyes and listen as thunder rolls across the water, soft and rhythmic, like the beat of a heart too old to hurry. Everything returns. The ocean murmurs, even you. The storm doesn't come as a roar. It comes as a whisper. A low hum through the air, a change in the pressure, a silence that feels almost reverent. Then the horizon moves. You see it first as a shimmer, then as a wall. A line of water taller than cities, rising where the sea should end. It's not angry, it's inevitable. You stand frozen as it approaches, slow, smooth, elegant in its cruelty. The wave rolls forward like time itself, folding light and air into glass. It doesn't crash, it consumes. And just like that, the land pays its debt. Coastal towns vanish in minutes, forests bend like grass, roads twist into rivers. The ocean reclaims the space that was always hers. But as you watch from the high ground, there's no sense of vengeance in her movement, only balance restored. The water isn't punishing, it's remembering. You wade through the flood inland, through drowned fields and shattered walls. Everything that once defined the land, its boundaries, its ownership, its permanence, has dissolved into rhythm. Here, where a marketplace once stood, fish darted between the beams of sunlight piercing the surface. Here, where temples once towered, coral begins to grow along the marble steps. And there, beneath the slow roll of a wave, you glimpse something heartbreakingly beautiful. A statue of a king, half buried in sand, his stone hand reaching upward as if begging forgiveness from the tide. The sea doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. You wade through what was once a street, now a channel alive with drifting debris and the ghosts of civilization. Every object, cup, bowl, scroll, rocks gently in the current like a cradle. Even in destruction, the water moves softly. You feel her touch your skin, cool and heavy, and you realize she's not taking life away. She's returning it to herself, the way she always has. Above you, the storm rages. Lightning forks across a black sky. Thunder rolls over waves that reach for the clouds. You remember the first fires, the first floods, the first creatures that crawled to the sea for safety. It's all the same story, the same rhythm. The land kills. The water forgives. And forgiveness always comes with forgetting. Because in a few thousand years, no one will remember these drowned empires. The reefs will grow over their ruins. The sediment will bury their names. The fish will swim through the arches of their temples as though they were natural formations. And the sea will be still again. You drift through the floodwaters, letting them carry you past rooftops, past forests, past everything you once recognized. The moon reflects in the waves, unchanged, indifferent. It feels almost peaceful, almost holy. The world, for all its violence, is finally quiet again. And in that silence, you understand something the land never will. The ocean does not rage when it rises. It simply remembers its shape. You let yourself float, eyes closed, body rising and falling with the tide's gentle breath. This could be the end, or it could be the beginning again. Because every flood the world has ever known ends the same way. And from that stillness, something new crawls ashore. The rain begins to ease, the sky lightens from black to gray, and as dawn glows faintly over the drowned horizon, you whisper into the wind, "We never learn, but the water always teaches." The tide answers, not with words, but with calm. A single wave laps against your chest, tender as a mother's touch. Then another, each one softer, each one smaller, until the storm is gone, and the world, once again, is water. The world is quiet again, so quiet that the silence feels sacred. You open your eyes to a planet reborn, not through mercy, but through repetition. The sea stretches endlessly before you, smooth as glass, gleaming with the reflection of a pale, forgiving sun. No cities, no scars, just calm. You drift on your back, staring at the sky. The clouds slide by slowly, their shapes unfamiliar but beautiful. The air is heavy with salt and possibility. Every breath feels older than your lungs. Somewhere deep below, tectonic plates whisper to one another, reshaping the continents once more. The drowned mountains of yesterday will rise again as tomorrow's new lands. The world never ends, it just rearranges itself. You tilt your head, and the water murmurs against your ear. It's speaking in its ancient tongue, the one it's used since before lungs or language existed. The rhythm is gentle, maternal, endless. And in it, you hear every age you've lived through. The Permian firestorms, the Sulfur Seas, the drowned plains, the cities built and swallowed. It's all still there, layered within the waves like pages of a single, infinite book. You realize now that water isn't just a refuge, it's memory itself. It carries the minerals of vanished mountains, the bones of forgotten species, the whispers of empires that never learned humility. Every drop of rain that touches your skin has fallen before, on dinosaurs, on deserts, on ships, on kings. You are drinking history, breathing it, floating in it. You glance toward the horizon, where the sun meets the sea, and for a moment, it looks like the planet has healed completely. But you know better. The balance is temporary, as it's always been. The land will rise again. It will grow arrogant again. It will forget again. And the water will forgive again. You wade toward a new shoreline forming in the distance. The sand there is white, unmarked, still forming from the slow crumble of coral and shell. The first gulls circle above you. Their cries echo like prayers from the future. You step onto the newborn land. It's soft beneath your feet, damp with the breath of the tide. The waves stretch toward you as if to remind you that this ground isn't yours, it's rented. You look back one last time at the sea. It glows like liquid memory under the rising light. Every end the planet has ever known began here. Every beginning, too. The ocean doesn't need monuments or praise. Its story is written in everything that lives. You kneel at the edge of the surf, let it touch your hands and whisper, not as a survivor this time, but as a descendant. We remember. The wave curls around your fingers, pulling gently before retreating, its final benediction.
For a long while, you sit there, listening to the rhythm of eternity, the slow inhale and exhale of the world itself. And in that rhythm, you finally understand. It was never about fear. It was never about punishment. It was always about balance, the constant, sacred conversation between destruction and renewal, between arrogance and awe. You rise and walk inland. The sea glimmers behind you, endless and alive. Every few steps, you glance back. You can't help it, because you know, someday, when the land grows loud again and the air thickens with smoke, you, or something like you, will return to that water. Not out of choice, out of memory. The tide hums softly, timelessly. Its voice rises with the wind, and for the last time you hear it say, "When the land forgets, the water will remind." The sound fades into stillness, the horizon shines, and the world sleeps in the arms of the ocean once more. The only time in history that water was safer than land was every time we remembered why.